How's it going? And welcome back to the channel. This is CarMiZa, and if you're not familiar with it, it is a legendary old school car audio build that I am rebuilding. In this video, we're going to continue working on the trunk arms and the wiring for the trunk arms. So in the last video, I did all of the prep and I handed off the trunk arms to James, the welder, who is my son-in-law. As a reminder, he had told me when he looked at it, it was going to be very difficult because of how thin the gas line tubing was that I wanted to use for the wiring loom. I gave him those pieces and I have them back in my possession. But first, I want to show you some quick footage of James doing the welding. All right, so that was James welding these up, and as I suspected, the guy is absolutely amazing. They came out incredible, folks. As you can see, the welds look amazing. It's almost sacrificial to cover them up. They came out really nice. Everything is very, very solid. Now, what I do need to double check is to make sure that there's no blow through. Again, because of how thin this wall is, I need to make sure that in none of the areas did the weld actually burn through the tubing, which is going to cause issues when I try to run the wires. So again, if you're not familiar, new to the build, the way that this is set up is these are the trunk arms that install on the car. There was a plastic cover from the factory that held the original wires that looked terrible, and I also wanted to do my own wires on the passenger side. So I created this out of gas line. Again, you can see more of the details on the creation of this in the last video. These are now welded on and will serve to run the wires. So I've got that side, and then we've got the passenger side as well, where I can run my wires. So All right, so at this point, we're going to continue on. And the next thing I'm going to do is try to figure out how to identify. I can kind of see like this first weld. I can see through here, and there's no issue here, but I need to figure out throughout this entire thing to make sure that there is no blow through and I don't have any sharp places where the wiring is going to either get hung up or cut. So I'll work on that now. All right, so here's what I came up with to be able to test to ensure that, again, there's no blockage and there's no sharp edges. I wouldn't say this is, the final test is going to be running the wires through, but this is going to get me pretty close. This is 8-gauge wire, power wire, that is a little bit smaller in diameter than the wiring that has to go through this tube. There's 14 pieces of like primary wire, OEM wiring, to go through here. And if you watched in the last video, it barely fits, but it's going to require some massaging. So here, I pull this through, put a little WD-40 in there to make it easier. And I'll do the same thing when I put the OEM wires. I don't hear anything. Nothing's getting cut, nothing's getting caught. So I think I'm good with this. I'll do this on the other side to ensure that both sides are good. So James did an incredible job, as always, with the welds. All right, have you guys follow along from the beginning here. So push the wire through. This is a little easier than that factory bundle is gonna be, but we'll get through it, we'll figure it out. May need a little more WD-40. See the head. All right, same thing. I think if it blew through, it would get stuck or at least kind of drag, and I would see evidence of kind of cuts or scratches here. Another little trick I did, you guys saw this in the last video, is this is just 3/8-inch metal fuel line or brake line, and I flared the ends to make sure that when I do pull the wires through, it doesn't shake. So I'm going to consider that a passing grade. We'll move on to the next part. Okay, next thing to do is just a check post weld here, just to make sure everything is good. So again, if you've not been following along, wiring is going to come from the car through the tube up into the trunk lid. And this is where it comes out. You'll see in just a minute, I will install the panel, custom panel that I built. And that's what the other side looks like there. So I'll grab the panel and get that installed to make sure everything still looks and fits properly. Okay, as suspected, everything fits good there. Again, if you've not been following along, the 3 holes in the center will include an iPad in the center and then a couple of system diagrams on either side, all held in with neodymium magnets. So here you can see this panel kind of hides the flare. And again, I haven't quite decided yet if I'm going to leave this kind of separated like this or if I'll fill this whole thing in. We'll see. But yeah, the fit is good there. Everything is good. No problems on that side as well. And you can see where the tubing goes in. So on to the next step. All right, and here's the test fit on the car. I just popped the arms in, and as you can see, everything looks good. I will double check the underside just to make sure where it goes into the car, everything looks good there. All right, for my next move, I'm going to very carefully, and it's almost sacrilegious to do, but I'm going to grind down any high spots on these welds. What I ultimately want to do is, after I do this, I'm going to use filler and basically go along this edge with filler so that it ends up looking very similar to this from the factory. So that's what I'm going to do at this point. So I'll be very, very careful. Last thing I want to do is have a problem. So let's give it a shot. All right, if the lighting looks kind of funny, I've got a headlamp on just to give me a little bit more light. That's going to be the name of the game. I'm just going to go really slow, very careful, tick off the high spots, and I'll show you what it looks like in just a bit. Okay, that bit of the surgery went quite well. So again, just knocking down the high spots so that when I smooth it, the steel is now poking through. We're going to use a filler on this. So good to go there. On to the next step. All right, my next step is going to be to do a little bit more sanding of the OEM paint so that when I do my filler, I'm going bare metal to metal. I think that's going to give me a little bit better adhesion. Really nothing crazy here. I'm using a random orbital 5-inch with a 40 grit pad, and to do this. That's about all there is to it. So I'll get that all done and we'll get them cleaned up and ready to start adding filler. Okay, the additional sanding is done. Now I'll just hit it with some all-purpose cleaner, wipe them down really good, hit them with some air, and we'll be ready to move on to filling. All right, we're on to the next stage, and this is kind of, I think, where the magic happens. This is where this thing's really gonna start to take its final shape. So what I've got here is short strand fiberglass, or short strand fiberglass reinforced filler, technically is what it is. Take a bit of this, we'll mix it up. I don't really know how I'm going to do this, but I have kind of a vision in terms of what I want it to look like. So let's give it a shot. If you've watched my videos in the past on this build, you'll know that temperature, I find temperature to be really important with this stuff in terms of your mix rate. Not as critical as like fiberglass resin. That's where you're counting drops per ounce, but here, the garage is 75 degrees right now. I check that, and we'll go ahead and fill. So, get this mixed up really good. Again, I kind of have like a vision, I think, or at least a hope, in terms of what I want this to look like, and I think I know how to get there. So, what I'm going to do is take this, see if I can, let me go ahead and work on this for just a quick second. And I'll show you what I'm going to do. I think what I want it to end up looking like is kind of close to the factory piece. So you can see I filled in that area. I'm going to take my straight edge, drag it along the fuel line and the trunk bar itself so that it's basically flat. And I'm gonna kind of check it. I'll start out with that, and I don't know if that's what I'm gonna want, or if I want to kind of sand that down a little bit in there, or just to try to mimic the shape of the factory piece a little bit better. So, all right, I'll continue working on this and I'll report back in a couple of minutes. All right, I've got the filler on both pieces. It's ugly right now, I get that. One little quick technique I want to show you. While it's curing up, obviously as this stuff catalyzes and goes through its reaction, it's gonna go from super soft to hardening up. While it's still kind of tacky, if you will, I'm coming in here with a metal scraper and just kind of scraping down the high spots. I want to be really careful. I don't have to be, it's not like tissue paper or anything, but I want to be a bit careful when I sand this fuel line that I don't blow through it. That would really stink after James did all that great welding work. So I feel bad enough as it is covering it up with filler. But so let me just go ahead and get this. Again, you've got a bit of an open window. The softer it is, the easier it is to do this. And then, you know, if I was to do this tomorrow, it's going to be kind of rock hard. I could sand it, but this just makes it easier to come in here. So let me give me 1 second here and I'll show you. We're going to have, you know, a bit more sanding to do, obviously, and some more filling, but kind of getting the drift of what this is going to look like. This is what it would look like, excuse me, yeah, like that. This is the driver's side. So kind of filled in like that. I'm still, wish you guys were here to tell me what you would do here. Do I leave it like this and leave a gap and, you know, obviously I'll clean this all up, or do I close this whole thing up? I want people to know, I want to say, hey, I used fuel line to run the wires, and then if you look, have it be kind of obvious. So, yeah, I'm liking it. That hole right there is factory. There was another hole on one of these that someone drilled, and I did fill that. But I'll continue filling this, again, I might come in here with sandpaper and just kind of slightly bevel this a little tiny bit, just so you can kind of, you know, it accentuates the visibility of the fuel line. So I'll keep working and I'll check in just a bit. All right, so here we are after the first round of filler and just some basic scraping. You can see I still have some there. Just roughing it out at this point. And I think I have an idea. So let me work on something here and I'll report back in a few minutes. All right, I've sanded it down and I've got it to kind of mimic this same shape from the factory piece. You can see that's my inspiration. Mine's got more of a curve to it here, which I think is going to be cooler than this kind of an edge. I've also made, hope your answer was the same as mine, but I've decided I'm going to fill this in. You'll be able to tell if I tell people, hey, this is fuel line, you'll be able to kind of figure that out. This to me looks kind of sloppy. It doesn't look very finished off, and I think if I have this all as one piece, it's going to look a lot cleaner. So did that side, did my sanding, and I just basically took a 40 grit sandpaper and kind of went in like this. I've got some more fill-ins to do, but I think that looks really cool. Getting there, same is true on the other side, very symmetrical as well, and kind of coming along. So I think I'll probably do, I'll definitely do kitty hair. I'll probably do some long strand kitty hair, which is better for filling in big gaps like this, and I'll slowly kind of work up to this, get this area all done, finished in. I've got a little bit more, obviously, certainly more fill-in to do, but I'll do this with Bondo and then keep going at it, but I'm digging it. Hopefully you guys like it as well. I think it looks really cool. So I'll continue on and I'll check back in a little bit. Okay, for this area I need to fill in. You might be thinking, well, you should have just had James weld some steel in there. Possibly, but again, that puts this fuel line that's paper thin at more risk. So what I'm doing, you notice there, I've got some tape, and I'll now pull this out and I'll backfill that with long strand fiberglass to get that shape, and then sand as needed, and it'll be a nice tight mold into this area. All right, I know it looks a little messy, but I want to show you what I did here. So I did the the long strand fiberglass. I've got my backing tape, and I did this over on my little work table. As it was curing up, I popped the arm onto the trunk lid, and then I took, once again, my scraper and basically just came in and scraped these high spots out, just so it's less sanding. And I also, if you noticed previously, I marked where the panel is going to go. The panel kind of goes back here. So this will be good. I'll just do a little bit of sanding and more filling here, and that part should be good. I've got, again, some other sanding and filling to do, but general shape is there. We're getting there. I've done this side as well, and I'll get a vacuum and clean this up and continue on. All right, so there's a long strand fiberglass on the top side, really durable and strong and good for closing up big gaps. But now we've got kind of a nasty looking area back here. So what I'll do is take short strand fiberglass, resin filler, and mud that area up. And then I've got tape down. I'll put the piece back in, let it cure up, and it'll give me a nice mold of the backside, and we'll get both sides finished. Okay, I've got both pieces kind of back mudded, and I put this in just to see how we're looking here. Obviously, I'm gonna have to reshape this a little bit. I'll fill this in, I'll knock this down, make it one nice consistent gap here. Same thing on the other side, but very easy to do. I know a guy, so we'll get that tweaked and good to go. I definitely like, I don't know about you guys, but I really hope that was your same philosophy here, was to fill this in. I think it's just gonna look cleaner. So, all right, we'll keep going. I just noticed something here. This is gonna be kind of tricky to see depending on your angle, and it's kind of dark, but this is gonna look so much nicer than if I had the tubing split. So I'm glad I made that decision. Okay, I'm gonna pause here for the night, and this video, I started this video this same evening. So it's been about 4 hours. Doing all the stuff that you saw after getting these parts from James. So not bad, I don't think. And again, I'm really digging it. I think it's going to be cool and look really good. So I've got the garage doors opened for, as my buddy David would say, the WAF, wife approval factor, I think it is, just because it smelled a bit like resin with the kitty hair. So that'll be it for tonight, and I will check back in with you. Tomorrow is Saturday. Should be doing some work on the car tomorrow evening, but certainly Sunday. My wife's going for a horse ride with her friend, so I'll be out here pretty much most of the day until the afternoon. So that's going to be it for now. I'll see you hopefully tomorrow. I am back, and it is Sunday. Wasn't able to make it out here last night, but continuing on at this point. So moving right along, what I need to do is some more cleanup work here, where this again is where the tube enters into the trunklet area. As you can see, on Friday night, I did that little mold, and you can see what that did there. I will now shape this, kind of get it, you know, properly shaped. I did realize too, I'm going to back, I'll just take a wire wheel on a drill and kind of clean up the paint around this edge, because I find that this stuff sticks a bit better to bare metal, and then I'll just backfill this. So I'll continue working on this, get it shaped, and kind of that's the next thing on my list, is to kind of tweak this area and get that part finished. So on we go. Okay, let me show you this little detail here as well. So as you can see, I took the wire wheel and got rid of some of the paint here, so I'm down to bare metal. Then I put the panel, the iPad panel, on the trunk lid, marked where the panel went. This was kind of sticking out with my kitty hair. I kind of cut it flush. I'm trying to determine how far up here do I want to finish this off, and I'm basically going to go flush with the tube here. So next, I'll take this and get this area all nice and prettied up. Okay, I've got some another coat of kitty hair on the trunk arms, letting that cure up. It's about 70 or so degrees out today, so not bad. I gotta love Arizona. Now, because I've changed kind of the way the shape of that whole area is gonna be, I'm gonna modify this. So if you notice, I had a designated area for the tube to go into. Doesn't need to be quite this high. I went a little higher than I needed to, but I do wanna kind of hog out this area. So I'm gonna open this up bigger than it needs to be, backfill it with kitty hair, and do the same kind of procedure where I'm gonna put kind of a filler piece over the top of the trunk arm, put this on, and get a proper mold. So first thing is to remove some of this. To do that, I'll just use a Dremel. Doesn't have to be perfect, because it's just going to get mudded backfilled anyway. So it'll get precision when I'm done. So I'll do the same thing in the other side and show you what this looks like in just a moment. Okay, on both sides, I've got my shape good. I like what that looks like. Kind of tough to see, but you can see underneath there. I think it's nice and clean. Looks as if it was factory. And now at this point, I just need to go along and take care of all these little Bondo fill-ins. I'll use Bondo for this and get these basically sanded and final prep for primer. So I'll work on that now. All right, just show you a quick check-in here, working on the Bondo. For this, what I did is mixed up the Bondo, and with a glove on, just took my finger and went down along like this, just to make sure I get a nice even coat. You can see kind of like some detail there. In doing so, I'm going to have some leftover, which for that, again, I'm going to use the razor and just basically scrape this stuff off while it's curing up. It's nice and easy to work with there. As you can see, it's like peeling an apple. And this puts less stress on the tube to make sure I'm not sanding through it. So, all right, I'll continue working on these and hopefully get them, if not ready for primer, close to primer before the next time I check in with you. All right, sanding complete. And because these are going to be painted, I went to 180 grit. And we're going to do an epoxy primer because we're down to bare metal on most of it, and then a high build primer over the top of that. That's where I'm going to leave it for now, again, until I actually paint the entire car. But you can see everything. It's got some, looking at it like this, that's why I've got it on the tripod. You can see everything lines up really nice and symmetrical. I made sure my lines, everything looks good in here. I feel good about it. So one quick thing too, I realize this might not be everyone's cup of tea, and maybe everybody doesn't agree with my process here, and I totally get that. I completely respect everyone's opinion. But I was laying in bed one night trying to figure out how I was going to do this, and I came up with this idea and I ran it out. So that's kind of the way I work. I'm confident with it. I think it's going to work great, and I think it looks super cool, especially when this is all painted. It's going to look really nice, I think. So I'm going to see what I can do. It's currently Monday evening. The weather looks a little bit cool coming up. I'm trying to figure out, and it's a work week, obviously, so I'm trying to figure out when I'm going to be able to prime these. These are 100% ready to go. I just cleaned them. I wiped them off with I do like a soap and water before I put the primer on. They're 100% ready to go. So I do have to work on the shape of the lid panel where these go into. So I might work on that. See what else I can get done this evening to try to get some more progress going. But I'll definitely be spraying these in the next couple of days. So, all right, let me take a look at my list to see what I've got and what we'll work on next. Here's another view, just kind of giving you a quick walk around. You can see, I think it came out nice. Looking good. All right, onward and upward. All right, so I decided to deal with this. I'm pretty tired, it's late, but I want to get this car done some days, right? So I got to keep pushing. So as you can see, what I'm going to do again is I did earlier, I kind of just roughed it out, but I'll take more material out of here. It's going to be a bigger gap than what I want, but I'll show you again how I'll kind of back mud it and get that to be the right size. Same is true on the other side. But again, check out the bars on there. I think that looks really cool. All right, continuing on. Okay, I dremeled out what I needed to on both sides. So now we'll prepare to backfill that with some kitty hair. All right, so here's the way I'm doing this. I took a piece of scrap ozite carpet, this stuff unbacked, which is approximately the same thickness, maybe a touch thinner than the stuff I'm gonna use, but that's fine. Taped it in place. Now what I'll do, and I did that on both sides, now I will take some kitty hair and kind of slobber it up in this area, and then I'll put the panel on, screw it down, and that's going to give you a nice proper shape here. All right, there we go. And now all I'll do, once this cures up, I'll let it cure up overnight. I'll just take my razor blade, I'll slice this off, do a little finish sanding. Doesn't bother me the fact that I've already primed this. I wanted to get this shape proper. So did both sides, did plenty where it kind of oozed out. That's exactly what I was looking for. If you've been watching my series, this is a technique that I use. I did it on like the near wall in a recent video. So, all right, that part is good. On to the next part. Change of plans. I decided to cut this off now while it's still curing up. Again, this makes it pretty easy. Let's see if I can do this one-handed. All right, here we go. Once it hardens up, it would not be this easy to do. I'm trying to watch the filming and do this. And this I'm gonna do a little tweaking too, so we're good. All right, on to the next part. Okay, it's a couple of nights later. Sorry I didn't take you with me, but I shot these with an epoxy primer. So I went down to bare metal. So again, I'm not a painter, right? So I'm new to this, but I do know that when it's bare metal, you want to hit it with epoxy primer. I'm gonna let this cure. That's still wet. It's drying, and I've been fighting wind and temperature and all of that. So I don't want to sound like I'm complaining, but I need minimum 60 degrees, and it's been mid to high 50s when I go to shoot paint, which isn't going to work. So tonight I was able to do it. I'm going to let these cure up in the garage overnight, and then tomorrow night I will hit them with a high build primer so that they're the same kind of color, the same gray as what you see on the rest of the panels. So not much else going on other than the place is trashed. And I'm back to, if you've watched my video on the C90 illumination, I'm playing around with that thing tonight. If I find anything cool with that, I'll report it back. But otherwise, I'm going to continue on the trunk arms tomorrow night, and I'll keep you posted. One other miscellaneous thing I'm doing tonight, and that's kind of what the night is running the car. I don't run the car enough. I'm trying to make sure I run it at least once a month, just to keep it healthy. Before I bring this thing out and bring it on tour and all that, again, it's gonna have a full paint job, different wheels, and I'm gonna go through the entire car from front to back mechanically. I've actually got all the parts to do it, and it's not gonna take as long as the build. So things like brakes, suspension, fuel, spark, all of that will be addressed, and the car will be like perfectly new from a mechanical perspective as well. If you're not aware, the car has I'll call it a new transmission and motor. When Earl moved out here, late 90s, early 2000s, the car developed an issue which they had on these, which had a Nicosil block, and there was a recall. So BMW at the dealership replaced the entire engine and transmission. So that was about 10,000 miles ago. So other than sitting for a while, the car is basically, the motor is very healthy. I did a compression test, everything is really good. These cars normally are kind of rattly, but it is very quiet. So we've got a good foundation there, and then again, I'll go through everything mechanically, but just thought I'd share that with you this evening. Okay, I did some more work and I didn't take it with me. Apologies, but I'm dealing with wind, temperatures, and now a little bit of rain too. So I wanted to knock down the epoxy primer just a little bit. I had a couple small runs, and then hit these with the same buildup primer that I've been using for the rest of the install. And they didn't come out quite like I want. They came out better. I'm loving these things, guys. I think they're really cool. And again, here is what the factory had. And my objective was to try to mimic that, but do it a lot nicer. So as you can see, in my integration, I think up into the trunk lid area here, I think that's pretty cool. It's gonna have it's got some nice curve to it. And I got to do a little sanding here still. Obviously, this is still kind of a rough draft, but when this is painted, I think it's going to be, again, I think it's kind of an elegant solution. And then obviously this piece will be carpeted. The carpet will roll up underneath here. So looking good. The trickiest part now is going to be getting these into the rear deck and mounting these, because I've got my hanging rack, I call it, which is a piece of aluminum, and I have just enough room to be able to get, it might even rub if I close the trunk and I'm not careful, which for now I'm okay with. This is just, I put buildup primer on this mainly just to get it to match and so that it doesn't rust until I paint the car, but really happy with it. I think it's going to be super cool, and being able to run the wires through the fuel line, I think is pretty trick. So one other quick thing too. This video, I was hoping to be able to get all the wiring done, show you all of that and everything. And in typical Precision Bike fashion, it's not going to happen in this video. I am having a really good friend of mine, Jim Osterhout. Jim, if you're watching, what's up, buddy? He is coming into town from the Albany, New York area this weekend. And I want to get the car back together to show him. He's got a couple of coworkers coming in. So I am going to basically take, it's Thursday night now, I'll take tomorrow night and some time on Saturday to get everything kind of reassembled. I'm going to do some tweaking. I'll get the trunk lid back in, the iPad, those panel covers, and basically just get everything kind of tidied up for those guys to be able to check it out. So after that, and then I'll show you that, because I'm kind of excited to see what it looks like with the lid in there and the trunk arms and everything, at least in primer. So let me get all that together. And for anybody that hasn't seen it, I'll have the Milberts in there. I'll have the 845 display tube. I'll probably even put the caps in, the power inverter, the voltage gauge that goes in that hole. I have this really nice gold-plated analog voltage gauge, kind of a classy looking piece. So I got some work to do in here, obviously, but it won't be too bad to get everything put back together. All right, trunk arms are mounted. This again is kind of assembly for when my buddy Jim comes over. I will have to do a little bit of surgery to what I call the hanging shelf. As you can see there, I added some space with the fuel line, so I'll have to open that up a little bit, but I'll deal with that later. I think this looks really cool. I think basically, if I didn't say anything, it just looks kind of like factory, but then if I say, hey, there's fuel line there, you can kind of see it and then say, oh, wow, cool. Anybody who's a BMW E34 aficionado will probably know it's not stock, but pretty cool. And again, here comes my flared end for my wires that will come into the trunk lid. So at this point, I'm going to continue to reassemble the trunk. And for those of you who are new to the channel, I'll give you a glimpse as to what that looks like. Okay, it is the next morning. I've got to be a little bit quiet because people are still sleeping. It's still early. I just wanted to show this. If you've been following along, you may not have seen this view or this part of the install. There's a set of 1 farad street wires capacitors
Do have to measure the ESR and make sure everything's good there. You can see the distribution block, kind of the back side, and then that's the detail on the bus bar setup that Henry Warnega made, and that is still intact and will be used. And then I've got a power inverter there as well, and you'll be able to see that through the ski hole. I'll show you that in just a bit.
All right, so at this point, I've got the car all cleaned up and ready to go for Jim. Obviously, you know, it's going to be repainted and all that, but when someone's coming over, I like to take the time to prepare it and basically show them where I'm at thus far. So this goes for anybody too that's out there. If anybody is in the Phoenix area and you want to stop by and check out the car and talk old school car audio, I am totally game for that. So let me do a brief kind of a walk around with the car so far. So there's the engine bay. Again, the motor's been replaced. It's only got about 10,000 miles on it, but I'm gonna go through the entire thing mechanically. Taking a look at the inside. I've got one of the woofers in. So there is one of the 13-inch Bowers & Wilkins, and you can see it's flushed in there very nicely. Here's the other side, the driver's side kick panel, and if you notice, it's got a very, very slight kick out at the firewall. It's about 1/4 of an inch difference, so effectively it's flush, but that allows you to see the baffle, 1/4-inch plate steel. Now my son-in-law James welded in. It's all threaded for machined hardware. That tube you see is the sunroof vent. Notice also all the factory wiring completely redone, Molex plugs removed, bypassed to allow for room for giant woofers. Obviously nothing else in the interior so far. Looking at the back seat area, here is a bunch of wiring. I still have to do the wiring for the trunk area, so that's where this is still basically a hot mess. But looking back here, this is what this will look like. The backs are not on the Milberts, but those will be. Everything there is going to be gold plated. And kind of give you an idea there, there's the capacitors with the original bus bars that Henry built. And then looking at the trunk, kind of give you a full picture here. And right now I just have the 845, that big display tube, just kind of sitting there. And you can see the Zapcos hanging from the rear deck with the Sony equipment bolted to them. And basically that's it. So give you a little bit closer look at the finished trunk bars with my fuel line as my run for wiring. Still a lot of little tweaks I need to do before upholstery, but the bones are there, right? It's like a fixer-upper. But it's coming along, guys, little by little. My buddy Joe, shout out to Joe, New York, told me, he's like, you should do kind of a progress update video to show everyone where you're at, and I think that will help kind of with motivation. And he nailed it. I put this whole thing together, and I'm like, wow, there's a lot I've gotten done so far. Still a long road to go, but it's coming out really good, beyond my expectations, and I think I'm adding a lot of really cool things that I didn't originally think of. So let's go around. One other shot at the 13 in the kick panel, like it was built for it. And you can see the steel baffle welded to the car. And even the spokes of the woofer kind of wrap around the car like that. That's the way the woofer's built. It's pretty wild, but excuse me. All right, so that's gonna wrap up this video. Thank you very much for watching. Stay tuned, there is more CarMiZa coming soon, and also more AMG content as well on the channel. If you have not already, please like and subscribe, and I will see all of you in the next video. Thanks again, bye-bye.